friends, good evening to all of you. It's very regret I could not speak in Malayalam. Please permit me to speak in English. And I am told there is no translation, therefore within the short time let me explain what's the issue. During the Karnataka election, the Home Minister of India, Amit Shah, made a statement in North Karnataka. He said that there is no constitutionality in the Muslim reservation. When you read that statement, of course the Karnataka people gave them correctly the reply. They lost very badly. This kind of a communal card never worked. But what is important is that the Home Minister quoting the Constitution. That way we must ask which Constitution they are referring to. Already they are working on a Constitution to replace this Constitution. Few months ago in Kashi, some of the Swamijis belonging to the Hindu order made a conference. They did not discuss Hindu philosophy or Hindu scriptures. They discussed on the Bharatiya Constitution. According to them, that India must have a new constitution, and that constitution will provide for a Hindu Rashtra. What about Muslims and Christians within the constitutional framework? They also said very liberally that the Hindus will be the constitutional part of this. The Christian and Muslims, they can of course live here, do business, they can do education, but they can never have a choice of voting in this country. They will be defranchised. This is a new constitution which they are talking about, and they intend to take this to the people around. Initially everybody thought that this is only a exaggerated notion or a notion which nobody will accept it. But when recently, when the new Parliament House was opened, they had so many pictures all around. One important picture was the picture of India described. This is not a India as it stands today as a political entity. It is the Akhanda Bharat, which is a vision of the Nagpur party. Akhanda Bharat. People are beginning to wonder what kind of a message that the Indian government, a responsible government elected by the people, should tell the world. Now with this you have a Akhanda Bharat. Now everybody thought that you can see and go away, it's only a wish. But then the Bangladesh government has asked for clarification. Does the Indian government really think that they'll annex all the territories around India and they'll become the power of the entire subcontinent? Therefore this group, the group with which the Amit Shah owes loyalty, they speak in two voices, and therefore it's very difficult at which voice they are speaking about. I was also a little happy for the first time person like Amit Shah talking about constitution. It's important that they should speak about the constitution, which as it stands today, before they could think of replacing. It is in that sense, I feel that people must be made to show their loyalty to the constitution. You will all be surprised when the Bangladesh constitution was made some 50 years ago with the help of some Indian jurists. The constitution has got a provision under Article 7A which says that if anybody denigrates the Bangladesh constitution, if anybody works against the constitution, if anybody disrespects the constitution, they can be given the highest punishment under the CRPC of Bangladesh. More or less the same CRPC is also there. The highest punishment under their CRPC is the death penalty. Therefore the country almost thinks that the constitution is a sacred document and nobody can show disrespect. But that is not true of our country. We have played the constitution in different ways. We have also made several amendments. We do not consider that as a scripture or a holy book or a Granth Sahib. We have amended it 103 times. Good, bad, ugly, all kinds of amendments are there. But today's topic that has been given to me is the topic under which the constitution is overridden with social justice concept. Now when we talk about social justice and constitution, we should have some kind of a clarity, we should have a consistency, we should have a constitutional spirit in seeing what is this amendment that they are talking about. Now, when the constitution itself was being framed for the first time, they had a 2.5 years debate, very debate from all quarters, and every amendment, every change that is being proposed has been considered in detail, and Dr. Ambedkar, being a visionary, being the drafting committee chairman, had the obligation to reply to the House as to each amendment. So each word went in for discussion for several days, several weeks, and finally, when the draft was made, Dr. Ambedkar told the House on 26 November 1949, the day we celebrate as a law day for the lawyers. Now the government has set the Constitution Day. Once in a year we remember the Constitution, then forget about the Constitution. It is in that sense, Dr. Ambedkar said that this has been given to you. It's for you to work or to defeat. A success of a Constitution is for the person working on it. If you want to think that it should go, it is also in your hand. We are also aware of the situation that we have got political independence, but we have yet to get economic and social independence in this country. The sooner we get those independence, it's better for this country. Otherwise, this constitution will go into pieces. This is the visionary statement made by him, and people are aware that what is in store for the people, that there is no, it has been accepted that there has been, except for a political independence, that there has been no economic independence in this country. There has been no social emancipation in this country, and therefore, when we talk about social justice, we talk about with this warning that has been administered even before the Constitution was brought into force on 26th January 1950. Now, when you think seriously, when I talk about political independence, now what is this political independence? It has got a long history of sacrifice, it has got a long history of struggle, it has got a long history of people coming together and suffering for a emancipation from a colonial rule. But if you ask a law student, how did we get Constitution? One sentence you can say, in the House of Commons in Britain, the act was passed called India Independence Act 1947. The act said that we are relieving all the plenipotentiary control over the British India. That's how the act proceeds. And therefore, in one sentence you can say, this is how we got Constitution. Now that is a very funny way of saying that we got Constitution because British passed an act giving away the responsibility of managing the India. This is one way of looking at it. But our Constitution under 51A, where there is a fundamental duty which says we shall cherish all the ideals that led to the freedom of this country. If you think that all the ideals that led to the freedom of this country, there are several struggles in this country, there are several sacrifices in this country, and then you still say that in one sentence that we got independence. Now when the new parliament was inaugurated, you have seen the tamasha of the scepter, the golden stick that has been given to him, and our Prime Minister falling prostrate over that small mace. Even now our High Court, all the judges carry that mace. Called in Tamil as Sengol. What is this Sengol? We do not understand. This is a British practice. The British crown has got a mace. Also he's got a Kohinoor crown. I don't know why Modi did not ask for it to put on his head. Whatever the tamasha that went on, one thing is very important. A Madhadipati from Tamil Nadu goes all the way and then they gives it, made by a jeweler in Madras. And then they recreate history. You want to give a mace, a golden scepter, nobody bothers. You can do it. It is also now kept in the parliament. You can go and see that. Every day we are seeing in Madras High Court, all the 65 judges, there is a chowkidar who carries the mace before. And now they appointed a lady chowkidar. So every paper puts a picture. Now a lady carrying a mace. What does it matter? No, it matters nothing. Every high court has given up that kind of a practice. When I became a judge, I also said it's a very colonial practice. I am not the only judge who protested. And then you have 65 people are wasted only for this. In the morning he'll come, collect the mace, wait in my room. When I go to the court, he'll proceed before me and he will not say silence, he'll say us, because he is not very much formally educated. Now everybody who is the Varada will stand on both sides like the Noah's Ark, which has been described in the Bible. And then everybody goes away, the judge goes and sits on the seat. And then what does that chowkidar do? He puts the mace down and sleeps there till I go back to the chamber again. This is a practice. Do you mean to say in a country like this that we waste the human resource of 65 people, morning to evening only carrying this mace and coming back? And who pays for it? People are paying for it. They are very meaningless rituals that we should think of shoving it up. In fact, there was a judge from Madras High Court, Justice Ramasamy. He was transferred to the Punjab and Haryana High Court, having headquarters at Chandigarh. When he went as a Chief Justice, he found there was no mace. So he asked some people, why there is no mace? No, we don't carry this. Then it occurred to him that he should get back this mace. So he ordered from a Madras company called PRR & Sons, 6-7 maces, one for the Chief Justice. Of course, there is no Nandi on the top. There is only a 4-line on the top. Now he ordered 7 maces at a cost of some several lakhs of rupees. All the 7 maces were airlifted to Chandigarh with a cost of 30,000 rupees on a transport. And finally, he told the other judges that we must have a healthy practice of carrying a tradition which we carry in Madras. Therefore, we must carry in Punjab. And you know, Punjab and Haryana judges, they are born in a different tradition. They have seen the war, they have seen the partition, they have seen the actual independence struggle. Therefore, they told the Justice Ramasamy, enough is enough. We do not want to follow any colonial practice. We will not carry this mace before us. They wrote a letter. All the 10 judges wrote a letter. Then Ramasamy wrote a letter back saying, directing all the peons, they must carry this and bring it back. Then the judges wrote a letter to all the peons. Nobody should carry anything. This was a war of words went on. Now why I am saying this was, some of this pompous, ostentatious, a colonial practice, which the judges themselves wrote in the letter, that this is a colonial practice. Not only the judges wrote, later the accountant general went into the accounts and found no procedure was followed for purchase of the mace, and there was no authority to airlift, air cargo. There are trains are going every day. Why airlift? You must give a special reason. They asked for explanation. No explanation was forthcoming. This was one of the charge made against Ramasamy for wasteful expenditure and incurring the public expenditure, and he was sought to be impeached, which Mr. Somasekhar knows. Of course, there was 196 votes against him, 2 votes, none against the resolution. But nevertheless, the motion failed because the Congress made a cunning bit of not attending the parliament. They were present physically, but they did not attend the quorum button, and therefore the motion failed. Because under the Constitution, 2/3 must be present and voting. If they had only pressed the button, Ramasamy would have been removed. One of the charge was wasteful expenditure. Will anybody tell Modi that how that monies are being wasted like this? How is the history is being recreated? And now to justify this, they say the Swamiji went to Mountbatten touched it, and then they brought to Nehru's house, and then Nehru received it, and therefore the power has been transferred. Is this a history? Until such time they found the Hindu edition of 15th August 1947, which carries an advertisement by the Swamiji, not even a news. The Swamijis were standing in front of Nehru's house and gave him, like so many people were giving a lot of gift. That was a very historic day. And therefore everybody was giving gift to the first Prime Minister of this country. And then what about this Mountbatten story? Mountbatten was in Karachi, attending to Pakistan independence. Nobody ever justified all this. Now, in our own eyes, a history which was 75 years old is sought to be recreated and given a new dish. This is how the tradition has been brought. Contrary to what the Constitution says, You must cherish the tradition which won the freedom of this country. You are having people who are robbing and introducing a false tradition and then say this is what the tradition is all about. Are we all fools to believe all this? Can't we have documents to see all this? And the Madhadipati says there was no photograph those days. But there were photographs, they were standing in Central Railway Station. They were not airlifted like Modi did. He took them in a plane now. And whose money? That is why I am saying, when we talk about social justice, we must think of the Indian Constitution. The Constitution as written, as debated, as accepted, and then implemented over the years, and not what Modi Shah company tried to dish out as a new dish. That is why I said, when Amit Shah said, it has got no constitutional sanctity, I was very happy, at least first time they were believing the Constitution. Now the question will be slightly different. In Maharashtra, they are carrying a government which is purchased, a resort government. And now that government says they will bring in Maratha quotation, Maratha reservation. Maratha is a community. Now they passed a resolution, an amendment, which was struck down by the Supreme Court. Now the same government tells the people, we will bring Maratha reservation. Now how is that the BJP is justifying when the Constitution do not provide? When the Supreme Court says this is not possible, and now they say we will bring it, then how is that Modi and Shah tells the Karnataka people that Muslims cannot have a reservation in this country? There are two things. Whether it is justified or not is another thing. Whether it is constitutionally permissible or not, other thing. It is justified because if you see, there was a committee appointed by the Delhi Chief Justice, Rajinder Chachar. The Rajinder Chachar committee has been asked to find out what is the status of the Muslims in this country. A very sizable population, 14% of this country. And then what is there after 72 years, what is it they are up to? Now the committee has produced a very beautiful report which is lying in the government corridors. He said one of the worst affected community today is the Muslim community. The education level of the women of the Muslim community is abysmally low, and therefore he suggested there must be certain amount of affirmative action for uplifting the lot of the Muslims who chose to stay in this country. There was an opportunity they could have gone elsewhere. They didn't go. They felt they are part of India. That's why I am proud that we are having a polyface, a multifaceted country. People talk about unity in diversity. To make that more emphasis on that, we have also said secular democratic republic. And now there is an economic and social justification. And some other states have provided, Tamil Nadu has provided a backward status for the Muslim community. Now this man who is the Home Minister, who is supposed to be behind all the legislation made in the Parliament, he says there is no constitution. Now if that is true, I am asking how does the EWS quotas come 10% for economically weaker section? Was it provided in the Constitution? Now therefore my theme of today's talk is the 103rd amendment by which 10% quota has been given for economically weaker section. If that is justified, every other reservation can be justified. All that it requires is a constitutional amendment. That's one simple way of seeing it. But if you see the entire debate, if you see the history, if you see the affirmative action that has been made in this country, it has got a different history. In fact, when the amendment was made, when the first time when the draft was made, this reservation was thought about in Article 10, which has now become 15 and 16. When that amendment came in, there was a lot of debate whether it should be caste, class, everything. Finally, the accepted word was backward class. Dr. Ambedkar said we should provide for an affirmative action for the backward class because we are entering into an arena where this country is unequal. There is a community which can withstand for 2000 years, getting every benefit, education benefit, economic superiority, everything is there. There are hundreds and thousands of communities which comprise a chunk of the Indian population, do not have any such benefit. Therefore, it was thought that we will have a backward class. When the word backward class was introduced in the Constitution, there were, of course, members were debating. There is a member from Tamil Nadu, T.T. Krishnamachari. He was a finance minister later. He is also an industrialist. He made a very derogative remark. If you had to have a backward class without saying what it is, merely backward class, without saying what it is. If you see the constitution, it has got 397 articles. So many sub-articles are there, sub-clauses are there, so many schedules are there. There is one article where certain words are defined. Certainly, backward class is not defined in that constitution. So T.T. Krishnamachari told the House that this will become a lawyer's paradise. People tomorrow will litigate ever. This was one of his own. He himself was a lawyer, and a typical South Indian lawyer who made a very derogative remark, saying backward class means more lawyers will fight it out in court, and therefore no use in bringing such a word into the constitution. Now, Dr. Ambedkar, with his own wisdom, with his own scholarship, he told them that we are not here to stop people from litigating in court. Of course, this constitution will ever be debated in court. I do mind. Let it be so. If people take to court, that's another way court will answer these questions. And therefore, that backward clause was brought in. From that time onwards, then the litigation for every measure that has been brought in for a social change or a social justice has been started litigating. Now, the first battle, as you all know, they started from Madras. From 1920s, the Madras Presidency, which includes Malabar region also, provided for a communal reservation. Out of 6 points, there will be one Brahmin, then there will be 2 backward class, 1 scheduled caste, 1 Indian Christian. There will be 6, it will go each one. Now, it will go by rotation. So, all public employment were reserved on the basis of a communal GO. It's called communal GO because it provided refer to the community and some religion. There is a Christian, there is a Muslim, and therefore religion also. This was there from 1920, almost 100-year-old. Otherwise, the British thought they will never satisfy the Indian population. You have 80% of the population do not get into the public employment. You have 20% population occupy every seat. The upper caste, the Brahmins, they occupy every post. And therefore, the British Governor General said, we will have a communal GO passed, and communal GO continued to stay. After independence, the newly elected Congress government felt it is not only in employment, we should also think of education. And then it was extended to the medical college and engineering college. Now, when this order came in 1949, somebody chose to challenge this. By the time the constitution came into force, you know the constitution, I am not going to explain. Article 15 talks about, 16 talks about, that there shall not be any discrimination based on religion, caste, gender, language, area or descent. Now this is one of the very finest clause. Article 15 is really the heart of the constitution. In fact, 3 years before, a Bollywood film was taken. The title of the film was Article 15. Many of you would have seen. If you have not seen, you can see it in the digital media. Now the director of the film was asked, out of 397 articles, how is that you are talking about 15? Why you put the 15 in your cinema title? He very carefully said that I have seen all the articles in the Constitution. If you see that heart of the Indian Constitution is Article 15. Because 20 centuries earlier, people were never recognized as equal. There were divisions based on religion. There were divisions based on caste. There were divisions based on gender. There were divisions based on areas. There are divisions based on language. And therefore, for the first time, a state declared that there shall not be any discrimination based on all these characters. And therefore, this constitutional protection under Article 15, one of the important protection and one of the landmark from Manusmriti, we came to a constitutional order. From inequality or inequality, we came to an equality position. Does it mean equal means everybody is equal? That's another question comes. There are no equality in that sense. There is no arithmetical equality. Though we say our desire, our ambition to become equal, it is not the truth. Majority of the people have never gone to school. You have seen the story of Ekaleva. You can't learn officially. Indirectly you can learn and you can cast your thumb finger also. And therefore, this Article 15 and 16 for public employment, similar non-discrimination clause was there. And therefore, the first challenge was made to the communal GO by saying that you cannot recruit people for public employment on the basis of caste, because that has been prohibited. Now this was challenged by one lady called Champagam Dorarajan. She claimed that she applied for a medical seat, and by this method she will not get any medical seat because merit has not been the criteria. It was only caste as a criteria. Later it was found out that Champagam Dorarajan never applied for a medical seat at all. But then there are people to litigate, and they had some people to lend their names. The most important thing was who appeared for her. The person who appeared was Alladi Kissameyer, who was the constitutional advisor to the Constitutional Assembly. He appeared for that lady, and Madras High Court held very arithmetical situation. They said caste is prohibited. You can't have a caste-based reservation. Simple. The 80-year history is written off, completely gone. And now this is a situation which is went to State of Madras, went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court also agreed with that. On the same day when the Supreme Court agreed with this Champagam Dorarajan, where educational reservation based on caste cannot be allowed, they also said the same thing will apply to public employment also. Therefore, what was lost was a practice which has been there for nearly 40 years, has been given a go-by, and then people could not think of an affirmative action under the Constitution. And therefore, what happened is people took to the streets. Today the Constitution, when I talk about Constitution, I don't talk about Constitution as a dogmatic document. It's a dynamic document. It gets shaped, not just by the assembly debates or a parliamentary debate. It gets shaped by the people's struggle. And therefore the people of Tamil Nadu protested saying, you cannot withdraw the communal GO, because for the first time, even the upper castes were given some quota. And therefore the others also should have some share of the public employment, the share of a public wealth. And this is the core theme of the Indian Constitution. Now, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister, was first time faced with a constitutional situation, a court striking down a provision which has been there for several years, which has of course benefited many people in that area. And now a first amendment was made to the Constitution. Article 15.4 and 16.4 was made to provide that notwithstanding this declaration of equality, in order to make people to come up in life, there must be some affirmative action, and therefore socially and educationally backward classes, SCBC. SCBC means socially and educationally backward, not economically backward. There was social backwardness and there is economic backwardness. Educational backwardness. If there is no education, it will also lead to social backwardness. If there is social backwardness, they can never get into educational institution. That is why this constitution was amended and it was provided for reservation. Now from that time onward, the word SCBC comprises about two inseparable parts. It is a social backwardness, it's an educational backwardness. Therefore, the indicator is that you are not able to get into the education institution, that your society is not able to come up. And therefore, this reservation was brought in, and that was a victory of the people. The Constitution really answered the queries of the people, the concern of the people. And therefore, 15.4 and 16.4 became part of the constitutional mechanism which provided for an affirmative action. America does not have an affirmative action. They did not have any constitutional clause providing for it. In fact, perhaps ours is the only country which also constitutionally permitted an affirmative action by which socially and educationally backward classes will be brought in. And that became the true equality. You can't have unequals treated as equals and equals treated as unequals. This is a logic. This is a law of the society. Even if you go to any race, horse race, I don't know, Kerala doesn't have a horse race. You have a horse race in Madras, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kodai, Ooty. if you see the horse race, all the horses will have the same shape, but then their weights are different. If the weights are different and the jockey who is sitting over the horse, his weight is also calculated. So they will calculate the weight of the horse, weight of the jockey. And if they do not have the equal weight, they will put a sandbag on the horse which is lighter one, the thinner one. Now this is called handicap. If you see any handicap, it means that one is not handicapped by their thinness, by their weight. And therefore everybody is brought on the same weight and then they are allowed to run. That's how the horses are run. In a society which is unequal, in a society where millions of people were never been made to come to schools and colleges, in a society where people have been put to cherries and colonies outside the village, now we want to bring them together. You need some kind of affirmative action. That's how the affirmative action is there. It is in that sense, 15.4 and 16.4 continue to say in this constitution for the last 7 decades. Now, some of the judges today do not believe in this. Why I am talking about judiciary? Because it is not what is written in the constitution. It is what the judges say. Constitution is not what is written there. Tomorrow if the judge says, yeah, black is white, you will have to accept it is white only, not black. That's how the power we have given to the judiciary. Judiciary to review. Now there are some of the judges, there is one judge today in Supreme Court, went from Gujarat, Mr. Pardiwala. He was fourth in the Gujarat hierarchy. He has been now promoted out of turn. They say no, in Supreme Court there is no turn, there is no seniority, only merit counts. We accept what you say. Now he will also become the Chief Justice of India in 2028. How do people are selected? Why do they select this man and not the other man? Why first 3 people have been superseded? Nobody will get answer because all these are kept secret. One of the best secret in the world today is the appointment of judges. And I can tell you under incidents also how this happens. Now with Pardiwala, when he was sitting in Gujarat High Court, there was a case before him. It has got nothing to do with the reservation. But then in his mind, in his thought, the whole thing is occupied. Therefore he want to let it down. He want to let out his steam. He wrote a paragraph. He put all in this country, which has made this country to go backward, the country to go into different units, it's all this reservation. He has said that. And then he also said it has been amended several times to provide for reservation, though the constitutional framers said only for 10 years the reservation will continue. I don't know where he got that. The 10-year reservation was for MLAs and MPs, not for employment. For employment and educational institution, there is a different clause which says that until they are adequately represented, the reservation will be there. I am not saying reservation is the final issue. Reservation is one method, one affirmative action. And then the Constitution itself says, until they are adequately represented in all services. Who has to decide? You will have to find out statistics and how much they are reserved. You take a public employment. Take a class 4 post, peons, attendants. There may be a reservation completely satisfied. But take a clerk or take a group 2 officer or a group 1 officer or the IAS officer, district magistrate. They are not adequately represented. They are still there, very, very poorly represented. And therefore, the judge, when he wrote in his judgment that it is a shame that the parliament has been amending and amending for more than 7 times, he is talking about the representation in the parliament and assembly and not about this. Perhaps he is wrong, he could not get the facts right, but what he wrote is not part of his order and it is only part of his mind. And how did he able to survive? When this news came in the papers, some of the members of parliament wanted to take an impeachment motion and already 25 signatures were connected. You need 50 signatures to bring in for an initial motion. And thereafter there will be debate and the judge will be heard. The moment that news came, he made a suo motu announcement that he is cutting this paragraph from his judgment. And then what he wrote was, of course I wrote this, but then I find it is not part of my judgment, not necessary for my judgment. What they call it as a obiter dicta, unwanted portion. A judge writes everything, beautiful poetry, Bhagavad Gita, everything they say. And then even yesterday one judge in Karnataka, in Gujarat, he has said about Bhagavad Gita. how judges should be there. Gita is teaching, all right. Let Gita teach you all the equanimity, nobody says this. But then, when you write like this, in a portion where it is not required, it speaks your mind, and that is the pick that they have made now. He has been elevated now. Not only elevation in an ordinary sense, he will be the Chief Justice of India for 2 years, from 2028 to 2030. Now people are selected to monitor this institution, and therefore it is all the more necessary. Every citizen in this country must know what is constitution. It is not a job should be left to the judges. It's a job every citizen must decide that this is the constitution I am asking for. No other constitution. I will not allow you to touch this constitution. So they are most important today, when you talk about social justice, you should also talk about how this is guaranteed by the constitution, how it is important to retain this constitution, how nobody can allow to touch this constitution. Now this is most important. That social justice cannot be divorced from the constitutional objective that has been there and the constitutional practice that has gone for the last 7 decades. That should be understood today. And when this SCBC, the two twin tests, now this is there litigated forever. As I mentioned, they did not use the word caste, they used the word class. Now how does one justify this class and caste? The entire understanding of social justice will be seen. What do you mean by caste? What do you mean by class? The word class is not defined in the Constitution. The caste itself, in 12 places it comes in the Constitution referring to scheduled caste, not otherwise. The word caste is not defined. The word class is not defined. In fact, no philosopher, no social anthropologist, no sociologist ever understood what is caste in this country. There is no law prescribing a caste. Then how do people say the caste comes from the birth? How does anybody say that you carry from the birth? And then what happens if two different communities get married and there is a child? If you look into the Manu, if an upper caste marries a lower caste and there is a child, a judge of the Madras High Court who came here, Mr. Subhashan Reddy, he as a Chief Justice of Madras High Court was arguing a case on reservation. He asked me, what happened to the person who are born on intercaste marriage? What is their status? As if he doesn't know. He must have known by now. Then I told him, Manu says they are chandalas. Then how do you justify this? That your caste comes from birth, and if you go cut across the caste, then the person becomes untouchable. Now where do you get this? Today there are people who try to praise Manu. There are people who try to say Manusmriti is everything. In fact, 1 week before, a girl was raped and she was conceived because of the rape, the forcible sex. And almost it was 3 months, 94 days. They moved the court saying that we want to abort this child, unwanted child. Then the judge said, no, we will find out. No, they said she's a minor girl. How can she carry this baby? And it's not good for the baby also. At that time, the judge told the lawyer, have you read Manusmriti? Then he said, no sir, go and read. There were child marriages. A girl child of 13 years is married those days. And within 14, 15 years she is conceived. All this part of our tradition. Now this is what Manu comes in a different form. Not from a constitutional form, from the constitutional appointees form. He comes and tells in the open court. It is a matter of record. That read Manu. We have abolished child marriages long ago. Even during British period it is abolished. Only the case was, what is the age? Today we have gone far away. Nobody supports child marriages. And now you support a child rape. Another judge from Allahabad, he asked that man who raped the girl, will you marry this woman? And that man, without battling his eyelid, he tells the court, no, she is Mangalik. Mangalik in our language means, Mangal means Sevai, Tuesday, Chavai Dosham. That means she is not capable of getting married because that Dosham is there. And then the judge doesn't ask any other question. He passes an order. What is the order he has passed? We are hereby requesting the Lucknow University, head of the Department of Astrology, to examine the horoscope of this woman and find out whether she is Mangalika or not, she is having dosham or not, and submit the report within 5 days. For what purpose? Whether this rapist is telling truth or not. The rapist says, I will not marry because she is having dosham. And the judge wants to find out from the astrology department whether that woman has got a dosham or not. Where are we going? People who have been appointed to institute, examine and uphold this constitution. On the day when we take office, we say we shall uphold the constitution without fear or favor, without ill will. We will uphold the constitution. To the best of my knowledge. If the knowledge comes from Manusmriti, that is the question. Do you think that Manusmriti is ruling this country or the constitution of India under which you have taken office? This is the most important question. Now yesterday, that Gujarat judge, Mr. Dave, somebody said, sir, you are speaking loudly. All the papers are all watching. All the media will write about you tomorrow on this. For that he says, I have learned from Bhagavad Gita how to be, not to be bothered about all this public criticism. I do believe in this concept. Now this is the kind of judges we have. We have a judge in Madurai High Court. Today I am, though deviating from social justice, you must also understand this social justice is now entrusted to the judges to implement. And therefore what kind of a judges are sitting there is also important. And this Justice Swaminathan, not in a judgment, he goes and addresses RSS lawyers not here, in Kurukshetra, Haryana. He tells those lawyers, I have stopped reading Salman jurisprudence. Our Ramayana has got enough examples. And now we should win over a new Bharatiya jurisprudence. Now where do you get this? Now suddenly you forget the constitution. Then he comes and writes an order, some other order, no connection at all. He writes that as long as in India, the population ratio of 1947 is not maintained, this constitution will go into bid. Our constitution will continue until this population ratio also continues. Where does he get this? This population index comes into the constitution. The constitution itself says, we the people of India give ourselves this constitution. We the people of India includes everybody in this country. Starting from the Hindu majority to the minority Parsis who are only in the less than a crore in this country, less than 1% in this country. Now we the people of India, now you say that this ratio changes, constitution will also go. Therefore what you get from the RSS headquarters, from the BJP headquarters, from all the ministers of the Saffron party, and to the judges now, they speak in one voice. The voice is that this constitution is no longer useful. It is in that sense I come to this point. When the class are class, caste are class, this is a debate. The Supreme Court consistently said it is a class and not the caste. Unless you prove somebody is socially backward, unless you prove they are also educationally backward, there is no reservation. Up to Vasant Kumar case in 1985, this was the law. The Supreme Court continuously said even the judgment in Champakam Durrajan was wrong because there was an Article 46 which enabled the Parliament to make laws to bring reservation. That was overruled. The judgment which everybody says about caste is overruled now. Now when it comes to this situation, there is another question comes, the Mandal Commission. Many of you may know, because by the time you would have born, in 1990, when VP Singh government felt that apart from the scheduled caste, there is also the OBCs, the other backward classes, who also require a similar protection, a similar affirmative action. What is the basis? They look into the Mandal report which has been lying in dust, not cared for over the years, and nobody wanted to deal with the issue. It is an emotive issue, and therefore the Mandal Commission was implemented by just Mr. VP Singh, and there were riots. This again, you will see the double standards of BJP. The riots were created by the BJP, the predecessor of the BJP. Now what do they say? That reservation is against merit and therefore no reservation. It should be only on merit basis. Meritocracy or reservation. This is the issue that they were taking. And now they went to the streets. On the day when the cases were going on, in Supreme Court. I was appearing for the Uttar Pradesh government in that case. Indian Express wrote an editorial, "Take to the streets." Have you ever seen a newspaper telling the people, go to the streets? The matter was heard by the court, not by one judge or two judges. 5 judges are hearing this case. And then later it was sent to 7 judges bench. Now Indian Express write an article, "Take to the streets." And there was some self-immolation. Some 1 or 2 people who died due to police beating. The entire North India was in flames. On what issue? You cannot have reservation for the backward class. And finally, in the Indira Sahni's case, the Supreme Court spoke in a single voice. There was no dissent that this reservation is constitutionally permissible. That's how they said. They also said a reservation cannot exceed 50%. That's also they have said that. These two are important issues, that OBCs can have reservation similar to that of scheduled caste, and that any reservation altogether put together cannot exceed 50%. These are two things. In the very same judgment, at least 3 judges wrote that under no cost, economic criteria can be the basis for reservation. It is there in black and white. It is there, a majority judgment have said that you cannot bring in economic criteria for reservation because the Constitution talked about a social backwardness and an educational backwardness, and not isolated. It should be a twin factor. It should be equally present. Then how did the Mandal answer this question? Mandal put a 24 indices, 12 for social backwardness, 12 for educational backwardness, and then every village, every community is analyzed on these 24 indices. If any community exceeds 12 indices, then it is qualified for reservation. The question came, can caste be a factor for a backward class? The Supreme Court also said, if a caste answers all these criteria, then it could be taken as a single criteria, and then the caste can, at times can become a class. When does the caste become class? If it answers this criteria for social, educational backwardness, a whole caste. At the same time, they have also said, this cannot go on indefinitely. From time to time, you will have a review. So we come to one situation that it should be a twin test, and there must be a social backwardness, there must be educational backwardness. This has been the practice over the years. Now suddenly one day, they wake up. Now why not we talk about economically poor? In between you will see one more development. Article 21A under the Constitution has been introduced as a fundamental right, right to education. How does right to education come in? Up to 14 years, you are entitled for a universal, compulsory, free education. This was a constitutional right created in 1999, and BJP says that I am responsible for this amendment. All right. Now when does the act comes in? You write in the Constitution, the state shall provide a right. State shall provide. Provide means what it means. Now they bring an act in 2009, a compulsory education act. That was challenged by some of the private managers because they could not make a profit. They could not allow this 25% reservation. Therefore they challenged. Matter comes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says that the state obligation to provide education need not be done by the state itself. The word provide means it can be provided by other agencies. What are the other agencies? The private institution. How does the private institution come in? They will reserve 25% for economically poor people, and that money will be paid by the government. That is what you can't run directly, you can run by indirectly. So this is a very funny interpretation, because we are now saying the state should provide a free education. Now the state goes away and then makes some private parties, and then who gives money? Very same state is giving. What they should do directly, they want to do it indirectly. Now what is the difficulty of private people doing? Many of you know how difficult to get a job in that 25%. In fact, when the first time, when this judgment, after this judgment in Madras, one principal had the audacity to write to parents. There are such principals are there in the school. She wrote to all the parents, dear parents, from tomorrow onwards your child will be sitting next to your servant child. This kind of a class approach we have. That this quota meant for the poor people in the advanced institution, in the institution which are known to be a bigger institution. Now you say they will be sitting next to your servant. Nowhere you will find this. Now on top of this, Supreme Court says the state need not be establishing this institution and they should have a provide means, it can provide by other means. Very, very straining the language. Why I am bringing this was, there was a golden opportunity. You know, in America, all the educated institutions are free up to school stage. They even feed the child during the afternoon. You need not pack the food. They have a sleeping time, they have a feeding time, and then they have an assessment. And then every local body runs the school. They pay the teachers. And then one of the finest education you get that. Though it's a private enterprise, but so far education gets in free. Now we have an opportunity that the state should provide. Why I am emphasizing on the state was, after this economic weaker section, this 10% reservation by an amendment was brought in by the Modi government. One of the prominent scheduled caste leader in Madras, Tirumavalavan, one of the larger party in Tamil Nadu, he was asked in a television interview, "Sir, are you opposing reservation for poor people?" He said, "Certainly I will never oppose. But I want to know one thing, that if the state provides education and health free of cost, there is no need for any reservation in this country at all. Let them provide. Why we should be asked for reservation? Only because the kitty is small, only because the bread is small, we don't have enough share, and therefore there is a certain amount of regulation. If everybody is assured of education, we do not want reservation." This is what he has said, and he means what he said is almost true. The state abdicates its function and then goes away from education to so many other factors. And this is most important. If you just see this to an example to America, we have lost an opportunity. We have lost a golden opportunity to interpret that the state shall provide. The result was we have a different education institution. For the rich, for the not so rich, then you have municipal school. Of course, state government is now improving. The buildings are very good here. The government schools are there. But then there are people who go to every other different schools are there and different costs are there. Today I saw an advertisement for a KG section. 1.5 lakhs is a fee. When the Constitution talks about a free compulsory universal education. Where do we go? We have a different standard. There are people who study in public school. In America, public school means government school. In our country, public school means private school. There's a Mayo College in Ajmer. There's a Scindia College where Rahul Gandhi's father studied and his brother Sanjay Gandhi studied. I was invited. I studied in a aided school meant for poor people. After I became a judge, they invited me to attend the alumni function, saying, "Illustrious alumni." I don't know what illustrious, just because some High Court judge. They thought he's the only High Court judge from the school, therefore they invited me. Then they asked me to speak. I said that if everybody studies in Mayo College in Ajmer and Scindia College, you can become prime ministers, you can become other ministers. Who will become citizens of this country? It is this poor schools who produce citizens for this country. In a democracy, we need citizens. And then in interpreting this Article 21A, Supreme Court puts a rider saying it is not the state responsibility. For a contrast, if you see in America, in 1965, they found there are black schools and there are white schools. According to the neighborhood, this neighborhood, blacks are there, therefore they sent them to that school. The other neighborhood, there are white schools. They were finding the American Civil Liberty activists found that this system provides for a black school and a white school, and therefore there are two Americas, whereas America is only one. There is only one American Constitution, where it says all men are equal. Even today it says all men are equal. Men includes women. That came later. It's only by contextual meaning. The civil liberty activists filed a case saying you cannot have a color schools. You must have a mixed school. For the first time, American Supreme Court entertained a public interest litigation in 1965 and issued a very beautiful judgment. Brown versus Board of Education. You can see, you can Google this judgment. For the first time, American Supreme Court said, we are a single country governed by a single constitution. We cannot allow color schools. You must have a mixed school because we are color blind. How do you make it operational? Then they said we can bring buses because this boy will have to go there and that boy. The black parents opposed it. The white parents opposed it, saying my children will get affected. They'll be mugged by the white boys. They'll be mugged by the black boys. So sensing the mood of the parents, the American president, he said, told the judges that I will not implement this order. Then the judges wrote an order. If the US president do not obey our order, we will call the army to implement our order. And then the judgment was implemented. This is called as a bus case. For the first time, buses were introduced so that the children get compulsorily mixed up. So we have a united America. The result was you will find Barack Obama getting elected 2 times president of the American country. It never happened in this country. Though we have Adivasis, though we have, these are all token representation. They were not elected. They were elected by the ruling party. Whereas Obama was elected by the people of America. And there is no black America, there is no white America. There is only one America. Whereas we have not one India. We have a poorer children, then not so poorer, then not so little richer, then we have richer people. We have like a supermarket, like a hypermarket, we have categories. And then our Indian Supreme Court said, provide means not provide by yourself, provide by other agencies. This is how we slip away from the constitutional goal of having one India. And that is how, using this opportunity, on the one hand, you do not want to implement this free education. On the other hand, you say, we will support the poor people by bringing economically weaker section. Who is the economically weaker section? A parent who draws not more than 8 lakh rupees. He will be economically weaker section. Then how do you arrive at this 10%? No data. They never showed any data to the Supreme Court. This was challenged, saying this is a constitutional fraud. Article 103, you are now bringing a new category which is never contemplated. Socially and educationally backward is different from economically poor. Now they have provided for economically poor. Somebody is asking the question, is it wrong? Is wrong or right is not the issue. Question is whether you are committing a constitutional fraud in this country. If it is a fraud, you should call it as a fraud. It may benefit some people. I don't think the same people who argued on merit in 1990, I want to look for them. Because today if you see the cutoff mark, the last cutoff mark is EWS category. Then where does your merit go in? Now how do you arrive at this 10%? If your population is 3% or 4%, where does you get 10%? Now how does Amit Shah say that reservation for Muslim is a fraud on the constitution? I am now saying this EWS quota is a fraud on the constitution. If you think by a constitutional amendment you can support the poor people of this country, the so-called poor, then you can also support the Muslims. Therefore you are speaking in a forked tongue. You are speaking in a double voice. Now what is said that caste cannot be a criteria, today caste is the only criteria. Because in all other criteria, in all other reservations, you got to have data, you got to have solid statistics to say that they are socially and economically poor, educationally poor. Now for saying somebody is educationally poor or economically poor, EWS, you don't need any data, only income criteria. Now income criteria, who is there? Very, very curiously, the Supreme Court asked the question, why is that in the 10%, other reserve category you are not bringing? I am a scheduled caste. My father income is less than 8 lakhs. Why not you put me there? No. Hitherto reserved communities cannot get 10%. Then who is this 10%? Hitherto no other reservation is given them. Then who are these hitherto no other reservation? It is purely the upper caste in this country. They were able to manipulate the government to get a reservation in their favor. And 10% is a quota. When Supreme Court asked where is the data, they were not able to furnish any data. And therefore, I will only submit that what is argued against caste and then what is emphasized was a class. Today, it is no longer a class. It is a caste, it is upper caste, and it is a fraud of the constitution. Unless you understand that the social justice in this country, instead of providing for relief as contemplated in the original constitution, we are now deviating and going to a different direction. You just simply say that everybody will get reservation in this country. Then nobody will speak on the reservation. Nobody will speak on merit. Now in any bank examination, the last category is the EWS category. If according to you that you enjoyed the fruit of all these years You enjoyed the advantage of all these years of being an upper caste. Then why do you show poor response in this country? Now this is something which we should seriously think and then consider. And it is in that sense that we should try to uphold the original constitutional value and cannot allow people of Modi Shah company to dilute these standards and then allow what is prohibited now to come through a back door. And thank you.